Well, we have breaking news out of college hoops where Auburn remains #1 in the AP poll despite losing to #3 Florida on Saturday at the Jungle. The Tigers, who are coming off their first defeat in SEC play, received 34 of 62 first-place votes in this week's poll, edging out #2 Alabama, who received 23 votes. And that'll set up a 1 versus 2 matchup in the Basketball Iron Bowl on Saturday in Tuscaloosa as you take a look at the rest of the top 10 teams. Duke falls to a tie for #3 with Florida after suffering its first ACC loss of the season to Clemson on Saturday. Tennessee and Houston both drop 1 spot to 5th and 6th. For more on this and our reaction to the latest AP poll for men's college basketball, let's go ahead and say hello to our own Adam Finkelstein. Adam, it is so great to see you. Are you surprised Auburn remaining here at 1?
Pleasantly surprised, to be honest. I mean, I think it tells me that the voters are getting a little more educated because the analytics still really like Auburn. Ken Pom says Auburn is still the best team in the country despite that loss. I think, so often in the game of basketball, it just becomes a make or miss game. And when you really dive into that contest against Florida, Auburn just didn't make shots. They didn't make threes. They didn't make free throws. And both of those are uncharacteristic of a team that has shot the ball pretty well all season long. So it goes to show that no one is unbeatable in college basketball. But on any given night, this Auburn team still has probably the best chance to win a national championship. It's obviously going to be very close, but the fact that the voters did keep them in that #1 spot just to me shows me that they're diving into the analytics and they're paying attention to some of the details that maybe weren't always necessarily a priority in coming up with the.
Yeah, very good to see and hear. So now we have #1 versus #2 in the Iron Bowl on the court. We're all locked into that game. We cannot wait for it. So with that being said, who do you give the early edge to in this matchup?
Well, it's going to be really interesting because this is an Alabama team that is the fastest team in the country. I mean, they play with more tempo literally than anyone else in Division I basketball. Nate Oates' system is really well established. He shoots a lot of threes. The interesting thing about this year's team is they don't necessarily make as many as they have in years past. In fact, they're shooting just 33% from the three-point line, but they have won 6 in a row. Now, you dig into how, and they are winning close games. In fact, 3 of their last 4 have been by 7 points or less. I think they are the deepest team in college basketball. We haven't even seen the best of Mark Sears yet. He was the guard that most people expected to be the best in the country coming into the season. So I think they have untapped upside. I think they can shoot the ball better. I think they can defend better. They're only about 39th in the country right now. They have won on the margins coming up. I am still going to go with Auburn. I think they've got a lot to prove this year. As I said, the analytics still like them. But remember, this is just one of 2 contests we have in the regular season, with the potentially 3rd coming up in the SEC tournament and maybe even a 4th in the NCAA tournament. So these are 2 teams that are going to potentially see quite a bit of each other here over the next 2 months.
It's going to be quite the game. I cannot wait for it. I do want to go further down here on the top 25 and our top 10 here. Duke falls just 1 spot after suffering that huge upset loss to Clemson. Are you surprised they only fell by 1?
I'm surprised we have a tie for 3rd. Like, right. What is that?
By the way, how does that happen?
Yeah, I don't know what that is. Again, I think this is a Duke team that give the voters credit. I think whether you want to call them 3 or whether you want to call them 4, they are appropriately placed in this order right now. Because, listen, Duke got beat up in the paint against Clemson. They got out-rebounded. Clemson had their way scoring around the rim. I mean, the starting front court, forget about the starting front court, the entire front court, Kaman Malawach, Cooper Flagg, Malik Brown, and Patrick Ngumba, those 4 players who played a total of 80 minutes against Clemson, they got 12 total rebounds. And you are not going to win high-level games on the road if that is the case. Now, Despite all that, they still had a chance to win it down the stretch. Cooper Flagg slipped on that wet spot. You're going to see it right here. And that's not a error of ability like we saw early in the season. That's just a wet spot that caused him to slip. I think he was getting to his spot. I think he was about to tie up this game. And if it weren't for that wet spot, we might be talking about Duke as the #1 team in the country right now.
Oh, that's a fair point. It'll be interesting to see how this all kind of plays out. Adam Finkelstein joining us here, CBS Sports HQ. You can hear more from Adam and company on 24/7 Sports. Go ahead and subscribe on YouTube.